The President of the United States there in the midst of a fraught moment for his campaign after that shaky debate performance last week, giving another fiery performance at a rally. Now, he was on a teleprompter. He's saying one more thing there. It looks like he's talking about the crowd or the senator there or what have you. But anyway, he's on teleprompter. It might not be enough to assuage the concerns of some in his own party that want to see him do more unscripted events. But he certainly answered the question of the moment, which is he going to stay in this race? He said to that question, quote, "Here's my answer. I am running and going to win again." He then says people were trying to, quote, push me out of the race. He goes on to say, quote, "I'm staying in the race." He took on questions about his age head on as well. He instead listed off his accomplishments. He said, "I wasn't too old to make sure X, Y, and Z." He said he created jobs, wasn't too old to create jobs, wasn't too old to appoint Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court. The list goes on and on and on. He obviously took some shots at his opponent, former President Trump, as well. We have a lot to talk about, of course. I want to first turn to Selina Wang, who is live for us at that Biden event. Selina, if you can hear me, I got a text from a Democratic source as Biden was speaking saying, quote, "We are so back." This has clearly fired up some Democrats. What do you make of the president's remarks?
Yeah, Jay, I mean, there is a lot of excitement here. I could only catch the first part of your question, but that is really the resolute, more stable version of Biden that voters and donors and allies have been wanting to see for days now. So there are questions about why it's taken this long for the president to have this resolute statement. But as you say, he made very clear that even though some people are trying to push him out, he is not going anywhere. Now, there were a couple of small trip-ups that he made during that speech, but he caught himself quickly. Of course, this was pre-prepared remarks. He had the teleprompter in front of him, but we did see the president really effectively pivot and use his age as an asset. He made jokes about his age, but he said, look, I'm not too old to have done all of these accomplishments, and he rattled off what he had accomplished in terms of his mission to restore Roe versus Wade, what he wants to accomplish in the future, the jobs that he's created. He talked about gun control. He hit on a lot of core themes of his presidency. So this is a fired up President Biden that a lot of these voters were hoping and wanting to see.
And there he is. Let's actually listen.
I won't forget this. God love you.
I won't forget this. Democrats are calling on the president to do more unscripted appearances, and that was a very short one, but that was unscripted right there. And I guess my question, going back to Selina Wang, who was at that rally, is this event and the fiery nature of this performance only seems to underscore more how important this interview is for Biden with our George Stephanopoulos moments from now being aired in prime time on ABC tonight. Because if he can build on the momentum from this event, does he potentially put some of these questions, at least for the time being, they may never fully go away, but put some of these questions about his efficacy to bed? Selina, I want to ask you, what have you heard from Democrats about awaiting this Biden-Stephanopoulos interview? It seems like a lot of them are going to be watching, making up their minds, frankly, about how they view the president based upon, in part, his performance in this interview.
Yeah, Jay, I mean, I've been texting with my sources during that speech, and I'm going to be following up with them afterwards. But to your point, what they're more closely watching than this rally where he has a teleprompter is these off-the-cuff remarks, how he's going to do in this interview. Is he going to be able to prove that he has the mental fitness to do this job? George is a tough interviewer. They're obviously going to see how he deals with George's questions. He's going to be tough. He's going to be hard. And this is really how they're trying to assess as they wait on the sidelines. Are they going to jump in and join this small but growing chorus of folks who are publicly calling for the president to step aside? Or are they going to stay in the wait and see mode just a little bit longer? Now, when it comes to the donors, there is a split within the donor community. From what I'm hearing, you do have some high-profile donors like Reed Hastings, the co-founder of Netflix, who has publicly said that President Biden should step aside. But on the other hand, you've got billionaire Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, who says that Biden should stay in this race and he's fully backing them. But I am talking to other donors who, again, say they are anxiously waiting to see how the president does today and in the coming days. This is really a critical moment.
So Democratic strategist Julie Roginsky is standing by. Julie, quickly, before I go to you, I want to take that image of Biden full, because there is one thing of note here, which is over the last few days, there's been this steady drumbeat of articles that have come out about the inner world of Biden world. And one of them has said that his handlers, White House staff, usher him out of events quickly so that voters don't have a negative or voters or supporters or whoever may be at an event don't have a negative interaction with the president. One of the things you're watching here seems to be an attempt to cut completely against that. They're letting Biden linger in the event hall. They're letting him have these one-on-one interactions with voters. And they're doing it, by the way, in a way that the camera can capture it. So that is very interesting context for our viewers at home. Julie Roginsky, Democratic strategist, I do want to turn to you because I mentioned that text from a Democratic source I got to Selina. But I also got some other texts from Democrats. I asked one if they were watching this speech. They said no. How bad is it? This is a Hill Democratic source. So clearly there is a private panic amongst some Democrats about how he could be. And then, of course, I got another text from a Democratic source who said that he did well in this rally, but, quote, let's see how this interview goes. What are you hearing? And does this seem to underscore how important this interview is going to be tonight?
The interview is critical, but not just the interview. Look, this was an A-plus performance by the president. I don't remember the first time I met Joe Biden, but it had to have been 30 years ago. I've seen him on the campaign trail throughout those 30 years. This is the old Joe Biden that I know, the guy that jumps out into the crowd, the guy that takes selfies, well, even before selfies were a thing, the guy that hugs people, who has empathy. I mean, there's nobody better from a purely human perspective as a politician in all my years of doing this than Joe Biden. I mean, he's just an incredible human being, and it comes across as a politician. Having said that, we need to have this same performance sustained day in, day out, between now and Election Day. That's a very long time for anybody to keep it up, never mind somebody who obviously is not in the prime of his life. And so the Stephanopoulos interview is critical, but it's not just that. It's the interviews that happen after the George Stephanopoulos interview. It's the campaign events that happen after that. If his staff has heard, and it seems like they have heard people underscore how important it is to let Biden be Biden, to let Biden be the old Joe Biden who we used to know would jump into a crowd the way he's doing right now. I don't know whether he's capable of doing that, but that's a decision that needs to be arrived at, and that's something that we need to see very quickly. We cannot wait until the August convention. We cannot let the entire month of July go by debating whether Joe Biden's up to this or not. Either he shows and he proves that he is in the next few days and the next week, which is a tall order, or we have to look at other options. But let's not underscore how absolutely devastating his debate performance was in solidifying in the minds of a lot of voters that perhaps Joe Biden may not be up to the task.
I think one of the things that I have overlooked in our coverage that one of our producers reminds me of is if we have the audio of that room, the sound of the song I Won't Back Down is playing. See, that's Tom Petty. That's I Won't Back Down. So there is some semblance there, or some symbolism rather there as well. Julie, I want to go back to you here as we see the president exit that event in Madison, Wisconsin, because he began his remarks taking on Trump, and specifically taking on this issue that he's not fit for office by also attacking Donald Trump. He talked about a time when Trump misspoke about the Revolutionary War, and he said that George Washington, took the airports from the British. That's how Biden essentially began these remarks, with that knock against Trump. And then he says, quote, talk about me misspeaking, and then he goes on to sarcastically say, he is a stable genius. I guess my question becomes, do you think that strategy of saying, while I misspeak, Donald Trump does too, and also, as Biden made note of, Donald Trump makes false statements on the debate stage, is that strategy going to be enough to assuage the worries of Democrats who say he's just not up to the job?
Well, look, first of all, that will be determined by the kind of polling that Democrats see in the next few days to week. It's not really what we think, it's what the American people think, not those of us who do this for a living. But I also will say this, there is a tremendous amount of frustration, and there has been for many years, not just among Democrats, but among even undeclared voters who I speak to and people who are not totally the Trump MAGA cult, that the media tends to not underscore Trump's deficiencies the way they do for virtually every other candidate, because Trump is so good at flooding the zone. He so overwhelms people with such a barrage of nonsense that it's almost impossible to cherry pick one or two to focus on, right? If Joe Biden had had the kind of performance that he had day in, day out for the last 3.5 years, it would be very hard to cherry pick the Medicare statement, for example, that people seem to have jumped on in the debate. Trump has that day in and day out every single day. And yet, for whatever reason, whether the American people are not focused on it or the media just can't get through fact checking at that rapid of a clip, it's not focused on as much. And that's something that I think Democrats and others have a tremendous amount of frustration with, and something that I think I'm sure the president has frustration with. But I'm glad that he took the contrast to the fore today, because it's exactly what he needs to do. He needs to show this as a contrast between himself on the one hand and somebody who is a massive threat to this country and to this democracy and to this nation. And what he said about our country celebrating its 250th anniversary in a few years is something that I had said right before he went on stage. But so many people believe that we're